Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. Today's podcast is an incredible conversation with Lindsay Vastola. Lindsay is a fitness leader with a passion for potential, serving the fitness industry as an entrepreneur, industry magazine editor, board member, consultant, and speaker. Lindsay is committed to energizing individuals, leaders, and teams to maximize their vast potential in life and business through science, story, and effective strategy. Lindsay is having an incredible run in the fitness industry, and we talk about it all. She leaves a high-flying job in Manhattan to start an outdoor boot camp from scratch. We definitely unpack that decision. She then grows it to multiple locations with high margins and brings it all into a single facility with much lower margins. If you've ever thought about opening your own gym, that part is going to be for you. If you're running a gym, the next part is where you want to pay attention. We unpack her operations, decisions, and how she supported a staff of over 20 people. HR is an area of business where I believe Lindsay is a lead at, so she provides some really cool nuggets around how to support your staff. Then she does it again, decides to close the gym to start her next venture, Momentum 360. Lindsay has an incredible pulse on the industry, and she provides some key insights onto where the industry is going. Most importantly, the words we should be using as professionals to speak to today's client. If you ever needed confirmation to listen to your gut when making decisions, this podcast is for you. I hope you enjoy. Lindsay Vastola, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Hello, Trevor. How are you?
I'm doing great. And yourself?
Good. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on and really dig into your background. Because you didn't start in the fitness industry, right?
I did not. No. I have an upbringing in fitness, but not in the fitness industry per se. So we can go whichever direction you want with that.
Let's start with the upbringing. So was that family or relatives? I mean, what was the connection there?
Yeah, we can. Let's see. So my father, and I think this does connect to my journey in fitness and sort of my, I guess, more nostalgic connection. My dad, he played football at Cornell when Ivy League football was relevant, and he always talks about how. I guess he played in the 60s and 70s, lifting weights was literally something that the coaches, he was a lineman. Okay. And so if they got caught lifting weights, they were actually discouraged from doing it because they thought it would make them lean out. They were there for girth and size. So don't lift weights because it's going to make you lean and slow. And so I guess slow wouldn't make it. They just needed them to block, right?
Right.
And not they didn't need to be fast, but my dad, he talks about, he had a set of weights down in his basement, and he and guys in college would even go and sneak lifting weights. And so it's so interesting. He shares these stories with me. And it wasn't until like the likes of Boyd Epley, right? And my family stems from one side, my dad's side stems from Nebraska football. So Boyd Epley goes to Nebraska. He, brings in this strength and conditioning idea. And so, all these stories that I was always brought up with that obviously were extremely meaningful to my father. My father also made some very poor choices in life. He was an extremely successful entrepreneur, perhaps got caught up in his own charisma, if you will, made some poor choices and ended up going to what he refers to as federal college for several years. So when I was 5, that was really a pivotal point, obviously, for our family. That's how we ended up leaving California. We went to Hawaii. So I grew up in Hawaii, which I know sounds really tropical and exotic, but that was where my mom took me, my brother and sister, and ultimately, as a single mom, raised us there. But, after my father went through his years doing his time, he got out, I guess I was in middle school or early high school, middle school. And the early memories that I have of him was him taking me to the gym. I think he put me on the dip bars and a squat rack at like 11 years old. And for me, that was important time with my father because I had lost so many years with him. But the stories, and then obviously, going to the gym, it was a world gym, rusty, dirty, grunty, smelly. And the confidence of walking in there, partly because my dad helped me be confident, feel comfortable there. But the confidence that I felt in the movements of fitness, right? And then I was an athlete, and even at a young age, I was very lucky to have great coaches who really connected the mental toughness and tenacity with the physical challenge. And I think then that extended into all of the other things, even into my corporate space, what I teach now. So I know that was a little bit long-winded, but I think that's a key part of my story is fitness for me really was just something that I was brought up in, and it was a very, it's just a big piece of me.
So, what sports did you play growing up?
So I started, I tease, I started as a newspaper girl.
Long still
so
cardio?
My mom being like a single, yes. And like aim, because we had to throw the papers, and we would make it a challenge, to like hit the doorstep or the second floor. And that was, we delivered newspapers in order to help make ends meet as a family. But I got into cheerleading in middle school, and then made the cheerleading team my freshman year in high school. And we were like a national competitive, you sign your name with blood. She was probably one of the most influential coaches I had. She had us doing visualization. And I don't know, this was in the early, 90s, I guess. Right. And she would have us visualize and just a lot of the mindset stuff. And then I was poached from cheerleading into basketball and volleyball. So I did basketball and volleyball for most of my high school. And then I went to college, and I was too small to play college basketball or volleyball, so I played rugby. So there you go.
Volleyball and basketball to rugby. That's a change in the style of play.
I think that's the
That's like I feel like that's a
talk
sitcom.
About mental toughness,
right.
mental and physical toughness. Rugby definitely encapsulates all of them, and your ability to sing really dirty songs and drink after games.
Copious amounts of alcohol.
Yes, key part of the sport.
Right. No, that's awesome. And where did you go to college then?
I went to American University in DC.
Okay.
So I grew up in Hawaii. I was determined, I think this is kind of indicative of my personality, that I want to buck the trend. So everybody in Hawaii typically didn't go further than maybe Utah. They all stayed West Coast or home. Yep. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to the East Coast. And so I went to American University, majored in international politics, and minored in Japanese. And I thought that was something that big and important to do. I studied I studied Japanese for 8 years. I lived in Japan for about a year and a half. It's actually right after 9/11. So that was an interesting time to be abroad. Learned a lot there. Again, I know we'll talk about it, I'm sure, at some point, but lessons about just self-awareness, language, identity, change, transition, challenge. But so living abroad was a pretty powerful experience for me. So.
And was that post college, or was that like a summer internship or a J term or something like that?
Yeah, no, it was actually the program at American was a year-long program. So my whole junior year was at a university in Japan, and it was. So I'm certainly not knocking study abroad programs, but this was I had to take politics courses and economics courses in Japanese in order to make the grades in order to graduate on time. And just the way that the program went, it was extremely intensive.
Right.
So it was a little over a year I was there.
Okay. And did that kind of lead into the corporate world?
Yeah, so I graduated and ended up moving up to New Jersey, New York, and landed a job in New York City, which is like, I mean, at the time it was sort of like, I'm going to work in DC as a diplomat
Right.
or go to New York City.
Right.
So I ended up getting a job for an international translation and communications firm. So it was a work hard, play hard, 25 hours a day. Blackberries had just been invented. We thought we were so cool because, I was on the train 2 hours each way. So I'd wake up, I'd be on the first train into Manhattan, on the Blackberry. Tick, 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 tick,
Right. Yep.
with the keypad, and there all day, 2 hours coming back. It was, but I was young. It was my first career. I moved up very quickly. I got to travel all around the world. I got to go to trainings and sit in on sales meetings on some, these huge deals. And I did that for 6 or 7 years, and very quickly realized that the lifestyle was not sustainable. And then there's corporate management, a piece where, if I was a manager, I managed a $14 million division and 32 employees at the age of 24. And when I couldn't trust my management the way I wanted my staff to trust me, it was a pivotal point for me. Actually, it was my dad who told me, because I said, well, maybe if I just stick it out for a little bit, it'll get better. Maybe, management change, or I'll just try something else. And he said, today you say, maybe just a little bit more, maybe one more year, but before you know it, it's 5 years, it's 10 years, and you're doing the same thing. You're on the train 2 hours each way. And this was before I even was married and had kids. So one of probably the bigger professional realizations that I've had.
And so at this time, no kids, no husband. And was this kind of the transition into, hey, I need to do something? Was there really like a moment where you're like, this is not right for me? I need to do something else. And was that other thing fitness right away, or was there kind of this transition period?
Yeah. So I had gone on vacation. So I was dating my now husband. We had gone to Hawaii to visit family, and it was the first vacation I think I had taken. But of course, I was on the beach with my Blackberry. And I get back the first day to work, and there's something about vacation and going back to a job like that first day. I think a lot of us have experienced this, where you're like, holy crap, like, is this really what I was doing day in and day out? I don't know. I think a lot of people have those moments. And I get back, I'm the first one in the office. And of course, I had seen one of our biggest accounts, and I did the pharmaceutical and medical device division. So we had big accounts. And, it hit the fan while I was away. And my senior manager at the time came in, didn't even really acknowledge, he basically, short story, I felt like the rug was pulled underneath of me in terms of kind of trusting me as a manager to deal with the situation at hand. And it just left very deflated, very defeated. And that was, I remember so distinctly, I'm walking back to the train that day, just feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. And as I mentioned, my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was always an innovative, outside of the box thinker. And I'm walking back to the train, and I'm like, am I cut out to work for someone else? I mean, that was my question, right? Here I am, I'm giving everything to this company and above. It's just who I am. And it still doesn't feel like it's ever going to be enough. And will I ever be compensated in a way that I feel like what I'm giving am I getting that in routine? And at what cost, right? And again, this was before kids. So I went in, I think it was pretty much the next day, and I put in my resignation. And I even said at the time, like, I knew in my gut. Somebody told me the other day, we always say, listen to your gut. I think it's more important that we obey our gut. Like, I could have listened to it, but I didn't obey it. If I didn't obey it, I would have been doing that rat race. And I just, as uncomfortable it was, because I was making good money. We were getting ready to pay for a wedding. I was making good money for 4 years old. And to give that all up and not have a backup plan was scary. It was extremely scary, but I knew the cost for me continuing to do it was greater. And so put in my resignation, had no idea what I was going to do. I don't remember. I probably stayed another week or two. And then I was just kind of in this flux of, I worked in pharmaceutical and medical device. I lived in New Jersey at the time, which is like the haven for a lot of those companies. So I'm searching jobs. Nothing excited me. Me at all. And I said, well, let me take this, the reality that nothing excites me about going and working for somebody else. The industry doesn't excite me. The money might excite me, but, I've always been avid in fitness, right? And I always kind of thought, like, oh, maybe I'll go get my personal training certification or something and do that in my free time. And I really went all in. I got my first certification. I started my business, officially filed. I think I left my job like late that summer in August. I filed my business January that next year. I never went to go work for a gym. So I actually, as many hours of my life I've spent in a gym, I've actually never worked in a gym. And I think that is kind of a unique experience for a lot of fitness professionals. That tends to be like the most like logical pathway. Yep. I just started doing at-home training. I took out my first ad with the $356 that I had from a high school account. I took out my first advertorial in a local paper, got my first personal training client, had a full book of clients within the first 3 months, driving to people's homes, and then really pretty quickly expanded from there.
What were some of your strategies early on? I mean, so you did the ad to get the first client. So was it the ad that drove more clients, or did you have kind of a referral strategy or anything to find the next ones?
Old-fashioned boots on the ground networking. Okay. I would go to local networking events, women's luncheons, the Chamber of Commerce. And in retrospect, it was a lot of time in doing that. And so I built clients that way. The advertorial piece, and again, we're talking 15 years ago. So advertorials, Facebook really didn't exist. So I can't even say that was a strategy. But boots on the ground, like get involved in the community, go to schools, do real estate lunch and learns. I used to do those all the time early on. One of the first, I guess it was my second year of business, I went to Badger's Coulian's Fitness Business Summit out in California. And that was my first big investment in the business. Right. And that was a game changer because it got me starting to think about a consistent strategic methodology to building the business. Right? Like networking, yes, is important, but it gave me I had bigger sights. I knew that at some point I was going to reach a ceiling where there's so many clients that I can take in a day. Right. I'm working more hours than I did in New York City at the time. So how do I scale this? Even though at the time I probably didn't even know what scale was.
So what was the first step, right? Step one is usually for most people, train anybody that has a credit card. And then after that, was it like, okay, I want to then move to the gym?
So my progression was one-on-one personal training. Yep. I filled my book with I had enough clients, and then I said, okay, well, how do I scale this? And then I moved to boot camp. So I took that and I said, how can I do the small group training? I did a 3-day week boot camp. I contacted my local community, the town, to use one of their facilities. I did a 4-week session, 3 sessions a week. And by this time, by year 2, I had really already seen the value in email marketing. Like as simple and rudimentary as it probably was, email marketing to this day is the bread and butter of my business. Referrals, just, all of that. So, or, ongoing marketing and communication, trust building, right? And so I had this list because every time I went to a networking event, I'd get a bunch of cards, I'd add them to the list. Or when I went to the real estate agency or the school thing, right? Or I did a lot of those like local health shows, or, just again, boots on the ground, getting out in the community. So I had this email list at the time. It was probably only a couple hundred people. I said, listen, I'm doing a summer boot camp Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, 6 a.m. at this field, $250. It's way cheaper than you paying me to be a personal trainer. This is a great opportunity because $250 for a boot camp 15 years ago was a lot for people. It was very, like, all they knew was open access, big gym, $20 a month. So the only thing I could compare it to was, well, if you hire me as a personal trainer, you're going to pay me $65 a session. This only works out to $20 a session, and you get to be with a group of women and so on. Sold that out immediately. So that was 4 weeks. And then I would take a 2-week break, do another 4 weeks, continue to sell out. I added times. Eventually that led to a membership. Eventually that led to 3 different locations. And it was just really, like, I don't want to say organic because I worked at marketing it. But that was the progress. Then I ultimately opened my studio. I guess we did the boot camps. It was probably 4 or 5 years, and then opened up the studio.
So did you have other coaches that you then brought on to help with boot camps in other locations? Yeah.
So I eventually weaned out of doing one-on-one training because I either moved my clients into the boot camps, or just kind of the natural evolution of clients. So it was a few years that I didn't have any clients. So we had the one location. And again, very quickly realized, I said, if I want to expand, I've got to find somebody. Found my first trainer, trained her. She started training at my location. She was the one who opened up our second location for boot camp. So now we had the 2 of us running 2 locations. Very quickly then hired somebody else to work with me at our original location. She ended up going and opening the 3rd location. And then ultimately I was able to find somebody who replaced me. And that gave me the leverage to then like run the business, right? And go when I wanted to. So I was very lucky. I had great people.
So was there anything
to do that?
So this is a pretty common scenario, right? Where Lindsay is the face of the business for a period of time, but then you kind of transition out of being the face. Was there anything that you did strategically? Because I've seen coaches where they've just cut the cord and brought someone new in, and that can be detrimental because it's, no matter what it's called, it's still like Lindsay is the instructor. Were you were you thinking about anything as you're transitioning someone in?
Absolutely. I think I was very strategic. I remember, and this was some of the best lessons I learned in the corporate space, was if you want to gain trust as a leader or manager, bringing somebody in, right, if you're the person that they know, like, and trust, to bring somebody in, you have to hold that trust with kid gloves. Because I knew if I lost that trust, that was it, right? And so when I would bring in a new coach, and I had it mapped out, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't remember exactly what it was, but here was kind of the gist. That trainer would, for the first week or 2, all they would do is they would come in and they would train with the clients, and they would get to know them. I would introduce them. She's a trainer, but she would just kind of work out alongside the clients. And then eventually, but I would be talking her up the entire time. In my emails, I would be talking. I would have my trainers, when I knew that they were a good fit, I would have them write a blog post or write an email where I could really highlight and showcase them things that I knew my clients maybe liked about me that might be different from the other trainer, I would try to kind of reframe that to get them to like that about them, right? Like, just constantly communicating, talking about them, their highlights, their expertise. I felt like that needed ample time before I was like, okay, I'm not going to be here anymore. And then it would be, okay, Carrie's going to run the warm up and I'll run the workout. Carrie's going to run the workout. I'm going to run the warm up. We co-trained for a while. She would get out there and do, just more of the one-to-one stuff. And then it was, as they got to know her and like her, it was very easy for me to then say, hey guys, I'm not going to be here on Monday. Mm-hmm. Ever. And then, this is Carrie's, session now. And then when I would have my trainers open the new location, I really gave them ownership of it.
Okay.
And I think that's really important from a leadership standpoint, is that your staff needs to have ownership over something. And they really stepped into that. And I think that was really beneficial in the transition out for me.
So when you say ownership, is it more ownership in a subjective sense, or ownership in a, like, they're going to get a certain percentage of the revenue that this particular location generates?
Both. So ownership in terms of like, I want you to pretend like this is your business. I want this to be as successful as it is. I think that constant communication and helping them understand how you're marketing it, who you're trying to attract, letting them in on the sales process, the onboarding, right? And then secondly, how I tiered, and I think that this was a differentiator for most trainers at the time anyway, was I did revenue shares. Okay. And because my costs were like next to nothing, right. We used community centers, charging right. And we'd have 20 people in a session 3 times a day, 3 times a week. My trainers were making anywhere between $60 to $100 a session. Mm-hmm. And so it was the buy-in of, well, if I can have full classes and engage, obviously it makes it worth it. With that being said, and Trevor, one of my favorite things to talk about is emotional intelligence and understanding, especially from like a leadership standpoint. Not all of my trainers, their motivator wasn't money. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was, we can have tiered, incentivized ownership, if you will, in terms of a revenue share, but a lot of my trainers' education was important to them. So having them hit goals where I said, I'll send you to a Power Systems, up in Boston, conference up in Boston, Perform Better. Mm-hmm. That was something she was excited about. And so I flew her up to Boston, paid for her hotel room, got her did the conference, or maybe it was certifications or, so it's just really, I think, tapping into what their motivators were that helped them buy in and really like be as vested in Body Project, my business, be as vested in Body Project as I was.
So did you have a process in figuring out what they really valued, or was it just a matter of enough conversations over a long enough period of time and certain things obviously came to the surface?
I met with my staff over time. Of course, I learned and changed. So I wasn't always like this, but these were from trainings that I learned when I was in the corporate space is, regular ongoing communication with your staff. And the 2 things that I would ask them, and we would meet minimally once a month. I'd take them out for coffee or something. Mm-hmm. And almost every time, the 2 most consistent questions I would ask them would be, what do you want to be doing more of? And what do you want to be doing less of? And that's a really good indicator of what motivates and excites them. Okay. So I had an assistant once that, when she came in, I assumed, right, she's a typical millennial, so she must love social media. Great, I can have somebody do the social media thing that I do not enjoy. Right. I made that assumption. And when I asked her a few months in, I said, what would you be doing more of, less of? And she said, to be honest, I really wish I could be doing less of the social media because it really just I don't get enjoyment from it. I would rather be doing interaction with clients, mm-hmm. right? that gave me a cue that here I am kind of putting in the assumption that I want her to do this task. She doesn't like it, which means she's not going to be excited about it, which means she's not going to be good at it. So let me figure out something else. And I know that her motivator is engaging with people, seeing change, right? Another question, right? Or I would ask the same, what have you been doing more of? I want to be doing more workshops because I know I can make some more money doing the workshops. And so you can hear those cues. Like if money is a motivator, they're going to want more opportunities that like for the purposes of making more money. If it's, so anyway, that like, what do you want to be doing more of, less of, is just really has always been a very insightful question for me to ask staff to see what their motivators are.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. A Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
And so you started in the outdoor boot camp, and then you eventually moved it to a single facility, or were there multiple facilities?
Yes.
Single
it
facility?
was one facility.
Okay.
Yep. It was 2,000 square feet. And then the following year, we expanded to the space next door, which is like another 800 or 900 square feet. So we had the kind of the 2 rooms that we were able to offer.
So did you pick like a location that's like centralized to these 3 and then everyone comes to this one?
Yeah, it did end up being that way. It was the town I lived in, and the other 2 were kind of on the outskirts. And for most clients, I was really lucky that a lot of them, it was, even from the ones that were further, it was still close enough where they were able to follow us and go in. But that was a pain point. I knew was going to happen, right? Is there was probably going to be some attrition with people who just weren't going to come consistently once I made that decision.
And so, I mean, if you had to guess out of all the clients, how many made the transition?
We had about an 80%. It was 80-85%, if I recall.
And did all your coaches come as well?
They did. Yeah. And that was at a point I ramped up coaches, because obviously now I went from, we offered 3 sessions 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday was the outdoor boot camp. We had 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 9:30. Now I go into a studio where I have 24 hours to fill, right? And when you're starting to think of like, I'm literally paying for 24 hours, how do I maximize the hours of operation? And so and I'm happy to go into like lessons learned in doing that too. But so hired several other types of trainers and instructors trying to fill that schedule. With the different services, kind of, because I did change the model a bit, obviously, from the 3-day a week into now we offered a lot more group training and different services. And once we went kind of an all day, every day option. So,
right. So knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently?
You want the deep answer to that? I would have, going into the studio, I think the cost, I probably would have spent more time. I just had such a good business, which such a high, I mean, we were running 60% profit margins after payroll, after everything. I had literally no overhead. Going into a space where you're dealing with landlords and triple net and just HVAC issues and literally, I know that I could have done deeper homework in finding somebody who could help me build out, really come to figures on how many heads do I need in there every hour to make it profitable? What do I need to be charging per hour, per square foot? Making sure that every square foot in that studio is making X amount of dollars. And as savvy as I thought that I was, I know that from the beginning, had I figured that out versus probably 2 years in when I finally, really brought somebody in who could help me crunch those numbers. That was a big, and I see that in the fitness. I don't know if you do too. I think, everybody has this ideal. They want their own space. They might have a great business subleasing from a gym or in their garage, but there's this mystique about having your own big, beautiful space. But the realities of what's the cost of doing that? Freedom, obviously time cost, and then the real hard money costs. I think it's worth its weight in gold to find somebody who can help you crunch those numbers and really, really put you to task. The other thing I would do, I tend to be pretty headstrong. So if I make a decision to do something, our motto growing up was if there's a will, there's a way. You figure out a way. And again, my dad gave me this advice and I did not listen to it. But for every reason I think I should do something, I need to make an equal list of reasons why I shouldn't. And that's hard, but it forces you to ask people, it would have forced me maybe to ask questions of, what are things that I don't know, or just to have a more honest conversation about it. So thankfully, I was very blessed that the business in the studio, it was a good business. It wasn't 60% profitable like the boot camps, but it was profitable. It was a good business. But those were some of the hangups that I think I could have ramped up a lot more quickly had I done some of that homework early on.
So let's say you did do the homework, right? And you came up with the numbers. Would you have still chosen to move from a boot camp to a gym?
Yes. Partly because for me personally, it was a necessary part of the bigger vision that I wanted a space where I could do more than just the fitness. That was for me the appeal of having a space, because I was renting space for seminars and workshops and all of these other things that I wanted to provide. I said, if I can kind of house that on my own, that would be a big benefit. And so I think I would have. I still would have gone to the gym.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a, I think you hit it spot on, and we see it a lot in the fitness industry where, you kind of have a good gig, but for some reason we believe that gym ownership is kind of the pinnacle of the industry. But life changes a lot when you decide to then go from, just training all your clients to then having other trainers and coaches that you're responsible for, and having a facility and having a lease and having utility costs, and things go wrong, and you spend a whole lot less time training people and you spend a lot more time running a business.
Yeah. And I think that's, if I may interrupt, I think that's a question if somebody's at the place where they're like, do I go and get a gym? I don't think a lot of people really fully realize the time, like you said, if you're going in, I love training people. And if you truly love training people, just realize there's going to be an opportunity cost. You're going to have to be running the business, cleaning the toilets, whatever it is, right? So that's expanding the hours. And I knew, though, and I'll be upfront and transparent with this, I always knew I wasn't going to be training forever. I love leading teams. I love creating things. And if I could train the right people to deliver this amazing experience, I was going to be okay stepping back from the training. That would be something I think if somebody's thinking about opening up a studio, like that, the reality is if you love training and you want to be training all the time, number one, go as small as possible. I think that's a key, right? Like go as small, almost uncomfortably small that you can still deliver your service, and only expand when you have guaranteed, like when you have that guaranteed wait list, not like, if I build it, they will come. You have to have such a solid, well-oiled business in that small space where you're literally hitting. That's what we were at that point. I had a wait list. We were maxed out at all 3 of our boot camps. We literally could not take any more. And that's when I decided, okay, the time is now where I can expand, into a space that requires more.
And that's, I think, the challenge for a lot of people is you see the big facility, you see all the fancy equipment, and that almost becomes like the dream. And you're like, I want that. And then without realizing that is extremely expensive and your business model has to be rock solid. But you just going and opening the doors and thinking that you're going to fill a 6,000 square foot space with people is just not very likely unless you have a long runway of capital where you can bleed for a while until you get things figured out. And so,
and if I would add too, I think one thing that I actually had a business mentor ask me, a successful entrepreneur, and he asked me several really profound questions. And one of them was, he said, Lindsay, like, what's the end game? And I'm like, what do you mean? What's the end game? And he's like, well, think of you have to have the end in mind. When it comes to business, what's the end game? Do you want this to be just a business not just a business? Do you want it to be a business that helps you have the kind of quality of life that you want, that, supports your family, that leaves a legacy for your family? Maybe it becomes a family business. Do you want a multi-unit business where you open a few other locations? Do you want to franchise it? Do you want to build it and then sell it? And he said, because you need to run your business differently based on the type of business, what you want to do in the end. So if I wanted to eventually, find an investor, find somebody to buy the business after 10 years, I'm going to be a lot more conscious about how I pay myself, how I pay my staff, how I run those numbers, how I model, like how I financially model the business, versus I'm doing it just, as a means to support my family and create legacy and so on. And so I think that's an important question to ask. We go in like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm going to open this amazing business that's going to be life-changing, but we don't think the runway to where it's going to lead and your role as it needs to evolve from day 1 to day 365 and years beyond, when you're burnt out and tired from training so much, or maybe you realize you don't like managing people. Those are some honest conversations, I think, that are necessary before taking that leap into really any business, opportunity, if you will.
So, do you think it's a lot of just introspection? Do you think it's just having conversations with people you trust? Are there any ways that you've used to figure out, because things change, right? For example, for myself, when I started my business, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have 2 kids. And so life then was much different than life now. And so what I thought then is much different than what I think now. And so is there any ways that you kind of try to think through this stuff, or do you run it off of other people and just kind of talk it out?
I as I've gotten older, I'm a lot more introspective, but it's the catch-22. Sometimes you don't know the questions to ask, right? I can be introspective all I want, but if I'm not asking myself the right questions, it's not really going to be productive. I think the single thing, there's a delicate line or a delicate balance between the introspection and then paralysis by analysis, right? Then there's the piece of, absolutely, go out and ask people who have done it Go ask people who have failed at it. Go ask people who are doing really well at it, and ask them the hard questions. Ask them like, what was the surprise? What did you expect it to be? What's the thing you hate doing most? What's the thing you wish you could be doing more that you're not doing now because you are running this business? I think when you have those better questions to ask, going and finding the people who have been there, done that, and then striking the balance between the two. Because sometimes I have to catch myself doing this, where I'll go and I'll seek some sort of like confirmation from other people that my decision is right, like on anything. But at the end of the day, right, the decision's on me, and I can ask as many people. I'll get you get 10 opinions from 10 different people. How do you distill that down into, what is it really that you want, and what is going to be required of you? I think it's kind of that combination of introspection and going outside of you.
Right. All right. So you're doing the gym thing, you're figuring it out, you're starting to make the numbers work. How long did you have your gym for?
So I had the physical gym space 7 years.
Okay.
7 years.
And let's say year 6 and year 7, were you still heavily involved in operations and coaching, or had you kind of moved out of it? What was your role at that point?
No, I'd say the last 3 years or so, I was training 1 day a week, and it was by choice because it was, a training program that I love doing. And I do think it is important, whatever finger on the pulse means, right? Like for me, it was like, I have my 1 day, I get interface with clients. I was there visible at the gym, but I didn't have to be there, if that makes sense. But yeah, so mostly what I was doing was, the marketing, the team leadership, a lot of the writing, the content, just a lot of the back end growth stuff. That's another question I think is a big one. You come to a place where, you think it's the dream where the business can run without you. Like, oh yeah, I could go to a conference for 3 or 4 days and I have my backup trainers, or I have that freedom and flexibility. But there was a point where I remember, even though I could leave, I still had to like manage marketing and write content. And like, there was still business management that I was doing. And I realized that it's not about whether my gym can exist without me. Like it can it grow without me? I think that is like when you've hit the magic spot where it's not just, it can maintain and the clients will get their services. It's, can it grow without me? And that's where things like automation and, software systems and, things that you put in place so that when a lead comes in, how are they being engaged with? What's the follow through, those systems and processes in place that it can grow? And I don't have to be like, every new sale isn't contingent on me mastering it and following it.
So at that point, did you have a pretty flat structure where you had all of your coaches or instructors and then it was really you that they kind of, or was there like a management in between?
We had, I called them team leads. So we had, I had one that really was the team lead over like scheduling and anything that was staff related. So if somebody was going on vacation, she would be the person that, she'd contact Kelly, and Kelly would, they'd navigate subs or, all that stuff. We also had regular team meetings, I had a weekly team meeting with my leadership team every Wednesday, and then monthly team meetings with everybody. Okay. And I think that consistent communication is critical. Yep. So it was not flat. It was, I had, and then I had my like client engagement. So they were the ones that like were the first line of communication if a client had a question or, ongoing support and communication and all that stuff. And then I had like studio management. So reordering whatever, making sure that the studio is clean. I'm trying to think, those were kind of like the 3 big buckets. Mine was really like the marketing and all that stuff.
So was it like coaches with dual roles where they would coach for a period and, they'd coach 10, 15 hours a week. And then their other tasks were these kind of other leadership pieces?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And and I think that's a really nice, at least for me, what I found is, people, they love to train, but they have these other skills that they want to tap into that they're just not going to have the opportunity to do teaching a 45-minute HIT class or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, as I got to know my staff, it was, I had Kelly, who was extremely organized. She loved events and she loved creating a customer experience. And I had her, so she was retail. She was anything client engagement. I had somebody who was really good at those sales conversations. And so everything kind of funneled. So they were dual. Short answer, they were dual. I had one assistant for a handful of years who did not train, but she was an amazing in sales and writing and just back end stuff. But otherwise, everybody else was dual, which worked really well for us.
Right. So, I mean, at that point, how many employees or team members did you have? Do you remember?
At the peak, I had, I think, 22 or 23.
Okay.
And that was a lot.
Yeah. So was that a lot of like kind of part-time instructors too?
Yeah. So again, like if we want to get nitty gritty, they'd be in teaching 1 or 2 classes a week. Again, lesson learned, where I was like, just because we can offer everything, should we offer everything? And that's another conversation piece, if you'd like, right, is like, what's our signature? What makes us different than, the place where, the gym where you can get all this stuff, what really differentiates us. So I really I went out all out with all different types of classes and that sort of thing. I found it was really confusing for the client. Actually, there were almost too many choices. It was a lot to manage between all of the staff. And so about 2 years in, we revamped our model and we went to small group personal training with a few sort of auxiliary larger group classes that we knew they loved and were a complement to it. But that became our signature, which was easier to manage, promote, sell, deliver, and super efficient.
Right. And that probably differentiated you from the big box gym down the road that has the Zumba and Pilates and yoga and all of those classes kind of baked into a membership.
Yeah, and that was right around the time when Orange Theory, I had no competition before. We were the first boutique in the area. Right. So it was kind of easy. Yep. But then when we had something similar to an F45, right? It was, I think, Max Fitness, it was called. There was Orange Theory. Then you had yoga studios popping up. So we really needed to differentiate because we started seeing clients coming in and be like, oh, I just went to go check out Orange Theory. What makes you different? And so it was just, it's now you had to evolve how you're even selling your value, which made me reflective of what our services were.
Yep. So you decided to hang your hat on small group personal training. And what does that mean to you? Because it's kind of we have all these terms in the fitness industry. And I guess that's one of the things that frustrates me about the fitness. There's no norm, right? Some may call it semi-private, some may call it small group training, some call it small group personal training. So what did that mean to you guys? How did you define it?
Yeah, for us, well, I'd say the signature, and not to digress, but we really became signature for the lifestyle piece. So you were coming not just for the fitness, and that can be a different conversation point. But from a fitness standpoint, small group personal training, we had groups of 4 to 6 women. Okay. So that was small group for us.
And were they all doing the same program, or did they each get a kind of individualized program? How was it structured?
Same program, individualized in terms of their, so, we had,
regressions, progressions,
and we really regressions, progressions, tracked, what weight they were doing or how many reps, so that we could really document that. That was a really hard transition, to be honest, because we went from boot camp, go, blank to the wall, just do as many as you can. Even though I think our instructors were we really were about safe and progressive. But then when you try to change that psyche to everybody's doing this amazing circuit outside, now we're going to bring it inside and do kind of the same thing. But now at a small group personal training, which is personal training-esque. But it meant that some people who were doing push-ups on the ground, who had never should have been doing push-ups on the ground, needed to be regressing and doing them on the bench or the wall. It was a big transition, but it was a good one for us.
So I'm just kind of curious about logistics of that. And so I mean, when you're running 6 people at the same time, people are kind of mostly doing the same thing. Like logistically, how did you set it up? Did each person have a program and then you kind of like circled the right progression for that person? Or was it like, hey, 60 seconds on the clock, we're going to do push-ups. Lindsay, you're doing incline. Trevor, you're doing on the floor. Like how is that logistically set up for you guys?
Yeah, so we did, we had quarterly assessments, if you will. And so we would have, kind of like your benchmark things like squat, like pushes, presses, squats. I feel like you're making me really go back into like those sides. No, it's great. But you have to give the client their starting point, right?
Yeah.
And so from there, and we would have there's so many better ways to do it now, but we would have their binders or their clipboards right in front of where their space was, and they'd walk around with it. And so, and as the instructor, right, even though the movements are generally the same, the client knew because we communicated with them, listen, if you are, and I think we had it tiered at like a 1, 2, or 3, kind of most movements have 3 progressions, right? So if it was I'm just using a push-up as an example. Listen, if you guys are a 2 in the push-ups, this is the progression you're going to do. If you're a 1, here you go. If you're a 3, this is what you're going to do. And because the trainers and the clients, right, once they're acclimated to that, you're spending a few minutes explaining it, they get to it, and it was small enough. And we also I think what was really important, we really were intentional about putting, we're not going to throw an extreme beginner who cannot balance in a lunge. We're not throwing them into these small group, right? We had a fitness fundamentals program that they needed to go through before we felt like we could even put them in safely in that small group training. So that was another signature was, listen, if you haven't exercised, if you're coming off of years of not exercising, your first step is our 4-week fitness fundamentals. It was 3 days a week where they're learning foot positioning on lunges, and what a hip hinge is with, and we're using poles and all these things, like just body awareness. It's so unfair and unsafe to throw them into like a group that's been training for 2, 3, 4 years. So that was like our progression in.
So did you have like a fundamental class, or did they do like one-on-one sessions coming in?
We ran those fundamentals it was one of our, I don't know, you could call it a front end offer, I guess. Right. It was one of our entry programs. Yep. And we kept that small. We kept that to like 4 people. And I think we charged maybe, I think it was like $297 or something for a 4-week. They came 3 days a week. And what was cool, it was extremely systematized. It was workout 1, week 1, workout 2, week 2. And so I could put any trainer, right, because they'd been trained on how to deliver it. I could put them into delivering it, but we did that probably every 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
And that was one of our new client funnels. Right. But we did it one-on-one on occasion too.
Right. And so you said that kind of the lifestyle program was really your maybe calling card and what was your kind of your USP. So how did you guys operate that maybe early on, and then how did it evolve as your business got older?
It started with early on, probably when we started doing the boot camps, probably year 2 or 3, where we did the 6-week transformation. Okay. And I always tease, and we were doing transformations before they were cool to do transformations. But it was a promo for us. It was, coming for the 6-week transformation. Obviously the workout piece, we did do body composition. At the time we did give meal plans, but we had winners. I mean, we had what did we call it? It was like the physical transformation and the mindset transformation. And the physical transformation was pretty obvious. It was like a percentage of body fat loss or muscle gained or what have you. And then the mindset, or life transformation or something, we actually made our clients write essays. We would give them questions. And they would write essays, and it would be things like, what was the greatest change that you saw? How was your life better? I mean, just those kind of questions. And the staff, we would talk about an incredible staff building, team building opportunity. We would sit around, I'd order lunch, and we would read through, and they were all anonymous. We would read through these essays, which made for some amazing testimonials, by the way. Yep. And we'd read through and we'd vote for like our top 3, and then we'd get down to it. And those winners each got a year membership as a prize, which was, I mean, at the time it was $200 a month. It was, I mean, it's pretty significant. Right. And it was like the Golden Dumbbell Award. We had a big, announcement party, at the end of each one. It really was great for culture and community. I ran the 6-week transformation. We had a theme for each one. I did that probably for 5 years, tweaked it a little bit every time. Okay. I came to a point, however, where, and maybe this was just my evolution as a coach, I had women coming to me and saying, Lindsay, I think we ran 6-week transformations, we did 2 or 3 times a year at most. Mm-hmm. And they'd come like, Lindsay, when's the next 6-week transformation? Like, I'm really off track. I need the transformation. And my inside voice would say, like, but if it was really transformative, you don't need another transformation, right? It was supposed to work. You transform once, right? Right. And then I really had to be reflective as a coach. I mean, it's the same thing, whether it was the transformation or, hey, can you send me another meal plan or another travel workout? And I had to stop and think. For a while, I just got mad at them. Mm-hmm. Like, why aren't you just integrating the stuff why don't you just use that meal plan that you used before? And I think life teach us, this is a tenet of emotional intelligence, right? Like, all problems are leadership problems. Like, children's problems, right? Are they stemming because the children, or is it because the parent, right? Like, or the teacher and the student? What do I need as a coach? Like, what am I not teaching them that they need to know so that they can really experience lasting, meaningful success? Am I really teaching them in these 6-week transformations, right? Am I teaching them that they need mental toughness, that they need better stress management skills, that they need better resilience, that they need to understand more about, how our body works and why we have cravings and inflammation and all these things that are impacting their choices? And it was kind of this like come to Jesus moment where I was like, I'm really not teaching them what they need to learn. Mm-hmm. How can I go back to the drawing board, take the things that are appealing and exciting about these transformation programs, but actually give them what they need, right? I can, whether it's, it's the habit piece, but really the mindset piece, giving them a new way to look at fitness, a new way to look at food, a new way to look at stress, kind of in that, full circle, in order for them to see that lasting success. And so I scrapped the 6-week transformation, which was hard to tell my clients because they'd come to know it and love it. I had to, and I created the 8-week Body Project, which was an 8-week program I looked at models like Weight Watchers, and I said, say what you want about it, but one of the key pieces was you go to meetings and you have to look somebody in the eye. And I said, that needs to be integrated, right? And this is coaching, right? Yep. So they're coming for their workouts, but during the workouts, I can motivate them, but I can't teach them in that time. They need to come to the studio an additional time each week that is dedicated to education, to learning, to conversation, to coaching. That way I can demarcate. I can start to put my stake in the ground and say, yes, we're a fitness studio, but if you want to see lasting results, these are the things you need to learn. So you need to come to this new program where I'm actually going to teach you and educate you on these things. And I think that was a real aha moment, or a real pivotal point where we differentiated ourselves as, we go there for great fitness programming and maybe a meal plan, to they're actually going to teach me how I can succeed long term. And that was kind of the birth of the 8-week Body Project. We systematized it. It became our signature. I scrapped all the front end, other than our fitness fundamentals, which actually we would tie in with the 8-week Body Project. I didn't have to do like the cheap front end offers anymore because we became known for it. And people came in on that high value program because it gained credibility because I offered it consistently and regularly. And they knew that, like, and we would tell people flat out, like, we turned it to a point where anybody who wanted to become a member, they had to go through the 8-week program first. Okay. That was their entryway in.
So were you running it like every 8 weeks? Like when one was finishing, the next one was starting, or a couple times a year?
How did you, was the model? 4 times. We ran it, 4 times a year, which really, I mean, when you start taking holidays and breaks, it's for the most part, almost all year round with, holidays and things taking into account.
And so I know this is a few years ago, but what did you charge for that program at that time?
The way we packaged it, so we had a few other services at the gym that I really wanted to, obviously if you're going to be offering something, sort of like if I'm selling protein powder, you got to give the samples in order for people to want to buy it. So I said, how can I give a sampling of all these great services that are very much connected and getting the best results without feeling like I have to sell every single one of these individually? So the way I packaged the 8-week program was we did include the membership. So they had the membership to the fitness programming. So I did 8 weeks for a few reasons, which I don't know if it's relevant, we can go into, but 8 weeks, I found 6 weeks was actually too short. Anything outside of 8 weeks felt too long for people, I think, to commit to. 8 weeks, it's 2 months. It also makes it nice that it's 2 months of monthly memberships. So the value stack was two months of fitness membership, value of $199 times 2, so $400. Obviously, the content and education with the weekly coaching sessions. I had a dietitian that we worked very closely with. And so part of the program was a small group, what do we call it? A small group nutrition coaching session. And so the dietitian would meet, we had on average 20 to 25 women go through each round. And so we would take break it up, and they would sign up for a small group coaching session with the dietitian. She got a lot of business after that, right? So it's featuring our dietitian services. We had an incredible massage therapist who did massage at the studio. And so we included a massage with her as part of the program. So that was valued at $175. She got a lot of business from that because they get the sampling, they get the taste of it. So It was, I call it like the chef's table. Like with a signature program, you want to give them the chef's table of your business, everything that you do and do well, but package it in this one experience so that by week 6 and 7, they're like, no brainer. I want to continue the fitness membership for sure. I want to get massages regularly, and I want to meet with that dietitian on an ongoing basis. We priced, we sold it, I want to say at $497, $597 for the 8-week program, plus the memberships, a massage, the dietitian, nutrition coaching session. The value stack was like, I don't know, $1,400 or $1,500.
And did you give the dietitian and the massage therapist like a small kickback for their services?
Mm-hmm. So I arranged with each of them. It was like a discount on their services. I think I might have paid a flat per session for the coaching sessions, and then per client for the massage. It really, if I were to break it down, that first signature program, I wouldn't call it a loss leader. Like it wasn't not profitable, but I knew because the conversion rates were 85% out of that program into a monthly recurring membership, which was highly profitable. If like just investing, like the costs were a little bit higher in that initial investment, but it was, to me, that was that loss leader because I knew the high rate of conversion at the end of the program.
And then were you doing individual sessions from a mindset or nutrition standpoint too, outside of the fitness?
We did, so as part of that 8-week program, it was group coaching. At one point I was doing one-on-one, like as one of those like value added things.
Okay.
I did a one-on-one coaching session at the beginning, at the end of the 8-week. That was a lot. Like I just realized it was, I mean, you have 25 women. That means 25 1 hour, which really means an hour and a half sessions, at the front end and the back end. And I realized I'm like, they're extremely valuable, but it wasn't such a great change. Like they were still converting into the other program without having those one-on-ones. So unless like if I were to open a gym and do this again, I would probably add like a up level tier, right? If you want one-on-one coaching, you can buy up to that. But I did most of the coaching sessions, the group coaching sessions, but that was fun too. I brought my other coaches in, trained them how to coach it, because I knew it wasn't something I and only I could do.
Right.
But that was the fun part for me. So going back to like, what motivates me? What do I want to be doing more of? That's what I wanted to be doing more of. So, that was, that was motivating for me.
So they were really getting the kind of group coaching session by you. And that's where you did a lot of your education, right? Like that's where you probably had a lesson plan, like a lesson for each week that you're talking about and discussion and all of that. So they're getting that. And they're also getting the dietitian meeting. And what percentage do you think of people actually showed up for that meeting?
So this is an interesting question in the sense that, and I still find this with our coaches who are running this program, when you have an in-person, like come to the gym, we're expecting you to come for 8 weeks on Monday at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
The compliance or the show rate, if you will, very high. We would probably, if we had 20 in a session, by the end, we would still have a consistent 15, 16 who are still coming to, short of like life happenings or schedule conflicts, but completion of the program. And I think that's what builds into retention, right? There's the sort of accountability of you're coming regularly for workouts, obviously the support and conversations outside on email and everything. And if somebody's not showing up, right, we have systems in place to call and see how things are going. It is interesting, I will say, now that I run these programs primarily online for the coaching sessions, it's just like going to a conference. If I'm going to pay and go to a physical conference, I'm going to show up more likely than, I signed up for this webinar, and if I don't go, maybe they won't notice. I find with the online coaching, it does take some more work you have to really make these coaching sessions extremely engaging, like they don't want to miss it. Because early on, like we were noticing like, weeks 4 or 5, they're, people are just, they're not showing up. So you have to find different ways to engage people in an online type program to keep them coming back. Whereas in studio, it's a little bit different.
So if you were still running your studio and still running this program with the pandemic and how things have changed to a heavy digital footprint, would you still run those sessions in person? Or would you kind of transition to have maybe a Zoom ability with in person? Or is it like, hey, you need to be here in person because you're going to get the most value out of that?
I'd probably offer, and I have coaches who do this too, who still have clients. Well, now they've gained all these clients because they're digital, they're not local, to do like a streaming. So you stream the coaching sessions. I think that's, if I were to open a gym now, that's probably what I would do. Highly encourage that people come in or make that come in for the sessions, but have that streaming opportunity. With that said, I'd have to test that, Trevor. Because if you give people too many options, you also don't want it where 2 people are in studio, 10 people are online. There is something about that chemistry of having people in the room. So I don't know. Can I say, I'm not sure. I'd have to test it.
I think that's
it's
good.
A cop out, I know, but
well, but I think
that's an important point. You got to test and tweak and analyze, right, and assess.
And so with that price point of $597, were you like, this is where we're going to be? Or was it like, hey, the first time I run it at $397, that went really well. The next time I do it at $497, did you kind of ramp up to that? Or was it like, here are my hard costs? Like I need to be at this.
I know
need to be
at
at this
one
spot.
point, I think initially was $497. I bumped up to $597. I know I could have sold it for more.
Mm-hmm.
I know I could have. But maybe there was fear, maybe there was, but I know that the value of the program, I think over time we would have been able to definitely probably get it close to an $897, $997 program.
Right. I mean, your
in
goal,
that in-person coaching.
Right. I mean, your goal was the recurring revenue, right? It was getting people into the facility. And so just from a logistics standpoint, so you had new people coming into this program. Did you have current clients that were like, you know what, I need to do this. Life has gotten crazy. I need an 8-week period to just dial in?
Yeah, great question. When I first rolled out the program, I think I put a cap on it at 25. I would say 23 out of the 25, probably for those first few sessions, were our current clients. Again, these were clients who knew, like, and trusted us. Yeah. So anything we did, they just put their credit card out. Loved the program, right? But then at some point, like when a majority of your clients go through it, right, and the number inverses. And so then it became, pretty quickly, it was primarily new people coming into the program with a few of the remaining people who are like, okay, finally, I'm going to do the 8-week program now. I'm ready, or everybody's talking about it. And that I'd say to get we got our clients, maybe like the first year and a half was mostly current clients. And then, little by little, like the proportion changed. And then, after that first year or so, it was predominantly new clients. What I did though was, and I talk a lot about how important it is to have a continuity program. When you talk about mindset, right, it's almost like if we took a client through a 30-day fitness challenge and we didn't have anything to offer them afterwards, like what's the point? They need something to keep their progress going. Wellness, mindset, habit change is no different. And so I knew that I would get those same people, even though it was a deeper, more transformative experience for them. Reality is reality. They're going to face setbacks. And so if I didn't have something in place as a safety net for them to continue that knowledge and keep momentum going forward. And so we turned the 8-week, maybe a couple years in, we offered, and I think we did it really nominally. It was like $29 a month or $39 a month additional to their fitness membership, where we would have monthly, we call them success circles. That's kind of the coaching event, monthly success circle meetups every month. And these are for people who graduated. I'm doing air quotes, right? They graduated that 8-week program. Some people really enjoyed doing the program again, but every month we would bring in a guest speaker or talk about stress management or, a different topic that now they're continuing that language and everything, like the lessons that they learned in that foundational signature program. But now there's an opportunity for them to continue developing and learning on those habits and wellness topics.
So if someone wanted to do the 8 weeks again, did you give them a special price, or it's like, it's $597 and that's just what it is?
We had a member price. So if they were already paying their $199 a month, so I literally just, if I recall, I just subtracted it. It was like $497 minus the 2 months. You're sort of auditing it, but I loved those people in there because they were like your evangelists. They're like, I loved this program. I want to keep learning. I learn something new every time I do it. But yeah, they didn't get it for free or anything.
Got it. All right. So there came a time then where you're like, I'm ready to move on to something new. So talk me through kind of your thought process on that. Was there another turning point where it's like, hey, this isn't fulfilling me the way that it once did? And then we'll kind of get into some of the hows, but
sure. there was, like, you could talk like from a business standpoint. Well, personally, I had two small children. My son, I tease, I was like signing a lease and like feeding my baby at the same time, my firstborn. So we all know, let's be honest, like, you can't compartmentalize personal and professional. So that was a challenge. Had my second, my daughter. And so it was right around when she was, I don't know, a few months old or so. And I just I got to a place, so I'm working with this mentor, and he said, Lindsay, if possibilities are limitless, what would that look like? And I found myself, I couldn't answer the question. And that really, it kind of jolted me. I get in the car and I'm like, but Lindsay, I've always been like a limitless thinker. I always think of possibilities. And I literally could not think beyond just my studio. And I realized that my studio, for me, was almost this analogy for how I felt about those limitless possibilities. I felt limited. I felt like the four square walls was this analogy for how I felt in here. Like my ability to impact and influence was kind of limited by what was required of me in this studio. And concurrently, what was happening is I had one of the largest YMCAs in New Jersey had come to me and said, hey, we noticed this program. Would you be open to us like bringing it and somehow integrating it at the YMCA? I had, a couple corporations that were saying, hey, what would you bring this program to our company? And I think it opened my eyes. I always knew, again, full transparency, I always knew, end in mind, I wouldn't be in the four square walls of fitness forever. And when these opportunities started to come to me, I said, okay, I think I've got something here. Because the way the program is designed, it's not a prescriptive program. It's not like, here's the Lindsay Vastola way of fitness. It's, I'm just going to get you to think about fitness differently. If it's the YMCA fitness program, great. It can complement, it doesn't compete. There's nothing nutritionally prescriptive, right? This is mindset, it's wellness, it's getting people to think differently. And as I saw these opportunities coming, I said, all right, where's the opportunity cost if, for every hour I'm spending on, growing and managing this fitness business, boutique studio that I love, and is working, it means an hour that I'm not working on something that I actually think has a greater reach. And so it took me a while. It took me a while and then mix in like landlord going bankrupt kind of issues and all that stuff, right? State of New Jersey. I mean, there's just all these other factors. And my lease was coming to an end. And I said, maybe this is time for me to make space for something greater. And that's where I made that decision. I said, how can I take this program, and offer it to other coaches who align with the same sort of beliefs, but just need something that is engaging, that's exciting, that's kind of done for them, but they get to shine as a coach that helps them with their revenue and, things that they're doing with their clients. And then as a coach personally, right? And so that was kind of the decision was hard, going back to earlier when we were talking about, sometimes I had to go, get confirmation from all these other people, even though in here I knew that it was coming to an end. So that was the evolution out of the studio.
And then what did the end look like for you? Was it a sale? Was it shut the doors? Like what was that transition like?
I explored all different options. I explored potential buyers. I explored maybe just selling the brand, selling the clients. And what I came to was, and again, it's a little bit of it was a little rocky because I had a prime location. The problem is that the landlord, as I mentioned, was going through, the property was with the bank. And so every broker I brought in said, nobody will touch this with a 10-foot pole because of the uncertainty of the land. So I was kind of caught between this, like, I have no control over ownership of this commercial property. Am I going to wait for this to happen? Or am I just going to, I don't want to say even like cut my losses, but to go through a sale. And I knew at least short term, I wanted to keep the brand. So didn't want to sell the brand. So what I did was I made some really great relationships with local gyms and studios. And I said, hey, listen, I have, 200 women who need a home. Can we offer, something, maybe, a discount, or I'll give you a referral fee for every client that goes to you. That was important for me to at least, even if they didn't take me up on it, but just an offer, to them in the community. But that was the end. It truly was like closing the doors. So
was that a pretty was that a pretty challenging?
It was depleting.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, It was physically, emotionally, mentally depleting. You have these inner conversations of like, am I failing these? I had clients with me for 10, 12 years, right? And
Right.
We all know this, right? We see babies being born and kids graduating, and like you see so much of them. And I felt like was I giving up on them? Did I look like a quitter? What were people going to think? There was a lot of that. So that piece of it, and then all the logistical stuff like selling the equipment, getting out, prorating. Are you reimbursing for memberships? Like, there's just all those loose ends. But I'll tell you, the minute I made the decision, when I talked earlier about like limitless possibilities, when I said, I'm closing the gym because I know there's something greater beyond this, I'll tell you, it was almost instantaneous. We're like flooded with ideas and, possibilities. And I think that sometimes we can get so shackled to something that we've invested so much in that it blinds us to possibilities. And I realized, I said, I'm not quitting on it. I'm making space for something greater. And, I came into these people's lives when they needed me most, and maybe they'll follow me, maybe they won't. But, it was something necessary for me to do.
Because that was how long? I mean, was that 12 years?
Yeah. So I had, between the boot camps and the studio, it was a little over 12 years.
Okay. So again,
significant-ish amount of time.
Right. So was it, I know what I'm going to do next, or was it like, I need to just kind of free up space to think about what is next?
Such a great question, because at the time, like, I think when you're in it, your mind is any big decision, your mind is so consumed by just getting through the decision, right? And all the mechanics of getting through it. But I think the way I looked at it, as I said, I feel like I'm in this tunnel, and it's dark, and there's so much going on that I have to navigate. But the difference between where I was before is like the light at the end of the tunnel seemed like forever away, like almost questioning, like, is there even a light at the end of the tunnel? Because I'm so embedded in the overwhelm and depletion of making this decision. But when I made the decision, it was like, okay, I know there's a light. I'm not sure what's at the other end of the tunnel. I have an inkling, right? I have this program. I have, great connections in the fitness industry. I think I could bring some value there. Like, I know I have opportunities, but I'm not going to stress myself out trying to figure that out right now, because right now I need to focus on getting through this tunnel. And then the quicker I'll get to that other end. So yeah, did I know exactly? No, but I had a general idea, and I think a certain degree of self-confidence that I would figure it out.
And even let's talk financially for a second, right? You're basically taking away a stream of income. And were you in a position where that was okay for the family, or was there another stream that was kind of starting to make up for that? Because I know that can be a kind of a real situation for a lot of people as they're transitioning.
It's huge. Full transparency. I mean, that, again, I don't know how, we can't separate the personal and professional. Right. So these are hard conversations in marriage.
Yep.
And, then what sort of burden does that put on my husband? Thankfully, I did have some nest egg that I had put aside from the business. I had also built up some coaching, some auxiliary things that I had started to build over the last couple of years in the fitness industry. So I had some other revenue streams, if you will, that wasn't going to be from 100 to 0 overnight.
Right.
And so that at least gave me a little bit of breathing space to say, okay, I have these things going. I can start focusing on this other thing until I ramp it up, and that can be the primary. But not easy. I mean, but, thankfully, I was in a position where, I had some of that as a safety net or a backup, if you will.
And one more before we move on. Were you starting to notice this a few years before you ended up making the decision? Or was it very much like a quick kind of have realization, this is where I need to go?
It was a few years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't say, maybe some of it was and this goes to the question, the discussion of, being a business owner, going, opening up a gym. The fatigue is real, right? Because you're not just dealing, you're dealing with client problems. You're dealing with landlord problems, depending on what kind of arrangement you go into. Those were significant for me. And then I lived in New Jersey where they were changing business laws, and, we had some other things. So all of these factors that, the opportunity cost. I always go back to that. It's like every minute I was worrying about the landlord issue, like who's going to be my landlord tomorrow, right? Or, what's the state of New Jersey going to change for me today? And these are just real things you're thinking about. I think it was a lot of mental fatigue that was taking away from what I wanted to be doing, which was just changing people's lives. And I said, there has to be a better way. And I think over time, I just, and then kind of coupled with, I have this program, I see potential and opportunity. Maybe it was a little bit of anxiousness to get that going and really push the potential of that. So maybe in combination of both, but it wasn't like a rash overnight decision. This was something that that really had kind of been brewing for a while.
Right. So, what was next then?
So close the studio. I went just to I dived in. I'll be honest, we've had these conversations where it goes from idea to this thing, no, this thing, no, this thing, no, this thing. So a lot of this tweaking, testing, this is going to work. I want to do this. No, I don't want to do this, which is frustrating, but all part of the process. And so again, I did a lot of coaching and consulting for a couple years, working on the program, kind of the online iteration of the program, because I didn't have it fully online. I beta tested an online program on Zoom 8 years ago, before Zoom was what we know it as. And people were like, this is weird. I don't like to see people on the screen. And here we are. It's the norm, right? So then I made it a priority just to keep networking, keep going to events. I'm a big believer in that. I think the more you talk to people, the more ships you put out to sail. That's how I ended up with, I have a big, agreement with a franchise agency. It was because I went to conferences, I was speaking, I was networking. And so that was really priority, kind of nurturing this next, business, if you will.
And that's one of the things I think you do really well. And that's how we ended up connecting. I believe it was at an FAI event a few years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
And so then you decided to kind of take this, you don't even call it Body Project anymore. What is it called now?
Momentum. So the programs are the Momentum 365 programs. Yeah.
So now you've kind of found this as being your kind of core thing that you're putting out?
Yeah. So I said, I've dabbled in, who do I go right to consumer? So I can take the program and invest my, money, time, and energy going right to consumer. I still have my client base, and I continue to build that list and everything. I use that more as an opportunity to create content, see what works. But right now, what really impassions me is how can I help coaches coach their clients in a different, more meaningful way that complements their amazing fitness programming so that their clients get better results. I find with coaches, it reignites the excitement for coaching, right? Because we can all coach fitness like the back of our hand every day, but these coaches, they want to coach the mindset. They want to coach holistic well-being, call it what you will, habit change, but they just want the tools, much like Coach Catalyst gives, right? Is like they want the tools to be able to do so. Yep. So they're not figuring it out and designing it themselves, which takes a ton of time and a ton of energy and expertise. And they just want to do what they love and they just want to coach. So that's really where I'm focusing right now. And it helps me, like personal professional development for the coaches. And to me, it's like that trickle effect that if I can impact the coaches, it's more reach to the people who need us most.
And so do you see coaches now? So like, and I don't know if you're still giving this talk, but signature programs was like kind of a big thing that you were talking about. And so is this momentum program, does that kind of turn into that signature program for coaches? And then they have the fitness or the personal training piece that goes along with it?
Yeah, I think that is more than ever. What differentiates, because there's just so much noise in the fitness industry. And I think it's easy for us when we're in the fitness industry to actually not recognize how much noise is out there for like what the consumer's hearing. We think our competition, if we are a boutique gym, we think our competition is F45 and Orange Theory. No, it is Apple Watches. It is Peloton. It is all the big boxes. It's politics. It's social issues. And so they're being inundated with so much. How do we cut the noise and really, really make it a different message? And so that I think some of the mishap that a lot of them do, they'll have their 28-day or something that they think is kind of signature to them, but it's really not putting their stake in the ground and saying, here's what we do different. Ergo, you're a kind of client who wants to come to us, which makes the sale very easy, which makes marketing very easy. And you can really put your stake in the ground and say, listen, we're fitness, but we're so much more. Here's what you get. Here's the guided coaching, different experience you're going to get at my place versus anywhere else.
And so, being that, you're still heavily vested in the fitness industry. What do you see the next 5 years? Like, where do you see the fitness industry going, and what should a coach be thinking about in order to really be attractive to that consumer in the next 5 years?
If you look at any trends of anything, of the fitness and health, wellness, well-being, are terms that are being used by consumers today that weren't being used even 2 years ago. So me selling my 8-week program 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was more challenging because you really had to explain and help people understand. Like they knew mindset, they knew wellness, but now it's like consumers are actually seeking it out. So, and you're seeing companies like Noom and a lot of these habit change programs. So it's front of mind for the consumer. So I think it's going to become very much the norm for consumers to look at the fitness industry when they go and select a gym or a fitness experience, right? They're going to be looking for more, and they want wellness to be a piece of that puzzle. So I think, which is really, we're primed for it.
Right. So when you say wellness is kind of like, it's like toning, right? Like you say toning, it's not really like a thing, but as a fitness professional, you know what the consumer means when they say it. So when the consumer is saying, or the client's saying wellness, what do you feel like? What's their actual meaning? What are they actually wanting?
So what I hear, like when I do these coaching sessions or these coaching, when I do the 8-week program, and I'll ask, like, what does success look like for you? And they'll say things like, I just feel like I want to be more in control of I want to be more knowledgeable about all of my health, right? I know that my mental and emotional health is important, just like my physical health is. So they're using wellness as just sort of, I think, this general feeling of feeling in control of their decisions, of their physical health. They want to feel, I think more and more I'm hearing, like, I want to feel more knowledgeable. I think people feel like there's so much information that it actually makes them feel really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to feel more empowered is such a word. They just want to feel more, knowledgeable, right? That they're making good decisions,
Mm-hmm.
not based on all of the things. So that's where I think wellness, it seems like the consumer is kind of, they'll use the word holistic now in a different way than they used holistic 5 years ago. Holistic 5-10 years ago was woo-woo. Now holistic means whole, right? Mind, body, soul, spirit, what have you.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
So you're seeing the coaches that are starting to create offerings around this, or gyms as a way to now attract that client, or maybe to be more a wellness component rather than maybe the transformation, component. Would you say that's accurate?
I think language is so powerful. And again, in full transparency, I use the words interchangeably because they all kind of mean the same thing. Mm-hmm. Some of what I'm doing is like, what resonates? Like, does habit change resonate with people? Maybe, maybe not. Does wellness, does well-being, does behavior change? I don't think behavior change resonates with the consumer. I think as coaches, we know that's what they need. Right. But to call something a behavior change program, I don't think resonates with the consumer. I'm finding mindset because that's the language they're using. Like, I know I need to change my mindset. They don't know what that looks like. Wellness, I do think, is also maybe a little bit big and broad, but the consumer identifies and they know they need wellness, holistic, right? I think you need to pick words if you're going to be offering something like this. Pick words that also, like, holistic doesn't align with me personally. It's just not a word that aligns. Mindset for me, even more than wellness, mindset for me resonates with me. How I talk, it's a little more like to the point. This is what we're focusing on your mindset. Wellness feels a little softer. So maybe depending on your approach or how you do it.
So with your momentum program, is like kind of wellness what you talk about, or what are the components that you decided that are important?
So for me, what I've found is that having this really treated as a signature program, we coin it as it's a mindset and habit change program. And the reason we do both is because, or we call it both, is if we call it just a mindset program, consumers still like action. Like, they want to feel like they're doing something. And to have a mindset program, what we found in talking to clients was like, am I just going to like be thinking about stuff, right? People don't equate mindset with like doing things, right? It's just thinking and reflecting. Where the habit change is like, oh, you're going to give me specific actions to do. And so we parlay the two and we say, how can we, through actions that you're going to do on a regular basis, teach you the tenets of mindset? And so it's kind of this perfect marriage of like, if you want to build a house, most of us are, we're buying the fancy windows and all the decor and making it really look pretty. But at the end of the day, if we're not focusing on the foundation, which is mindset and habits, if we don't have that foundation of the house, eventually the cracks will show. So you can buy all the weight loss programs and the diet programs, but without this foundational piece, none of those are going to stick. And that's why you keep failing. That's why you keep struggling. So that's kind of the angle that we take. And then the components, really, we're covering sleep, stress, hydration, food as fuel, and movement as fitness. Not earth-shattering. I didn't make them up. But it's how we organize it. And we use those tenets then to say, here are the habits. Here is a different perspective on each of them. Let's find your motivators. Let's talk about stress resilience. Let's talk about limiting beliefs. I can't take somebody off the street and tell them about limiting beliefs as the reason why they're failing their diet. But if I integrate it in a very engaging, action-oriented program, this is a way I can introduce these kind of concepts that I know they need to learn, but they're not going to buy that kind of program, right? So,
that's really good. And
I don't know if that kind of gives you a good idea of the workings of it.
That's really good. And so do you have a different concept every week? Or maybe if a concept's more challenging, it's 2 weeks long versus a 1 week one? How do you structure it?
We do, so the habit piece, it stacks 8 habits. So it's hydration, movement, we're specific, right? Purposeful movement every day. 5 minutes of quiet time is the stress management piece. It's just tools to make it easy to, coach on. So it is week by week. We all know 8 weeks is to take on 8 habits in 8 weeks. It's not going to stick. But again, the premise here is constantly reiterating to them that this is a foundational program. You're learning, you're increasing your awareness. We're seeing what tendencies you have so that then with our continuity, like ongoing, how we're going to support you beyond this 8-week program, we'll be able to keep the momentum from here so that you can really build it into what looks like whatever it is your everyday life looks like. But yeah, that 8-week program stacks 8 habits. Those coaching sessions is where we coach the mindset piece. So we talk about stress resilience. We talk about processes versus goals. We talk about, understanding how the mind works so that they can actually talk differently about food or fitness or stress and what have you. So trying to bring those two pieces together.
So then with the continuity, is it similar to what you had before where it's kind of this monthly meeting, or is there some individualization that happens with the continuity?
We do. So after they finish the 8-week, they move into what we call Momentum 365. So they go through 8 weeks of Momentum. That's the foundation. They get the principles, the language. That sets the tone then for Momentum 365. These are just little daily doses of inspiration, motivation, a video, a tip, a strategy, an interesting fact about the mind, maybe a health fact, right? But it's just keeping that, the dumbbell for the mindset training every day. And then monthly, a workshop, and this is something that I include in the program, is not just the daily content or the regular ongoing content, but that monthly meetup where it's a specific topic, a guest speaker, maybe it's more of a workshop. So we have like a healthy habit reset workshop that everybody, that seems to be a good one to reset. Stress management. We have one like on inflammation, again, tying in the habits, the health, but really focusing on that mindset, the mental toughness, mental emotional training piece.
And your goal is really to provide the coach with all of the resources they need so that they can just literally execute it with their people.
Yeah. Literally like do what they want to do is just coach and support and just give them the tools, the language. And it's not just motivation. I think that's, if you're talking about where the industry is going, motivation will get us so far. Like people go to Peloton and like, oh my gosh, they're so motivating. Okay, well, we can go all day about the science of motivation. But how do we, I did a thing this morning, a live, and it was like, at the end of the day, one of the questions I had to ask myself as a coach was, when I closed my studio, and a lot of my clients did not go, even though I did everything for them, like gave them all the options. and they still didn't, like, they're back to not exercising again. I look at myself as a coach and I say, like, what didn't I teach them to have self-accountability, not be dependent on me? And that's what I want to coach in these, through the program. I want to teach people how to be self-accountable, not dependent on the coach, but love the coach experience because it helps them up level, but they don't have to have the coach because they have this visceral self-accountability. And that's the most powerful. I think that's how we all reach our human potential, is when we know that, like, what our potential is, and we have the tools, not just the motivation, no motivational quotes, but like tools that we've actually learned to be able to continue it on. So that's what I want to give coaches. That support, awesome. Right? But just make it easy so that they can teach those skills to their clients.
That's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
All right. We're gonna kind of wrap this up with some kind of fun questions. I don't know if you looked at them in advance.
Okay.
See if we probably won't get through them all, but just some of my favorites. All right, taco, burrito, or quesadilla? You can change your mind. It's okay.
Taco, but probably burrito.
You can change your mind. It's okay. Anything you've purchased for under $100 that's had a profound impact on your life or disproportionate value?
This is the silliest thing, but toe spacers.
I like it.
I tell you, after a long day, just slip your toes in those toe spacers. It makes a difference.
Are you wearing like the ones that are for painting your nails?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, like the actual toe spacers.
Those are my favorite. Yeah, those are my favorite.
Are those the ones you have, Trevor? The painting nails one? I'll usually do it like the end of the day, awesome. Or if I'm on calls all day, I'll just keep them on my feet.
What cartoon world do you wish you could live a week in?
Roadrunner or Flintstones?
Any reason why?
I don't know why Roadrunner.
Any reason why?
Flintstones, I don't know. It just like their life and like just, I don't know, the everyday stuff that they go through. I think it would be kind of fun. I don't know if I'd be Betty or Wilma, though. I don't know.
I could see you in the Flintstones.
Or maybe there's a little Fred.
I like it. All right. Last one. If you could have dinner with anyone on the planet, past or present.
This was a really, really hard one. And I think it's just like, because it's top of mind. I've been reading and listening a lot about George Washington lately. My daughter was learning about him in school, and she came home and she's like, oh, George Washington was such a brave soldier, wasn't he? And I'm like, you know what? And then we started, as I really learned, just a fascinating man, a fascinating life. So it seems a little bit simple, but yeah, I think George Washington would be really interesting to have a conversation with.
I think that's a good one.
There's so many.
Yeah, no, it's hard.
But there you go.
Any books or things that you would recommend to a coach that's maybe just getting started?
So I have a few. I think just a stock one is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've probably read through it or thumbed through it, several times since starting my business.
Yep, that's a good one.
Mindset by Carol Dweck. So if you are, this was life-changing for me. Really made me ask some good questions. And then another one that's one of my favorite, super easy read, is The Go-Giver. It's just like this feel good, but like applies to business. My favorite part is the back where it has the 7, where is it? I thought it was the back or the front. I have it printed out on my desk, but it's just, basically when you give, you will receive equal in value. And I just like kind of the life principles, but also business principles in it. So hope those are helpful.
It's awesome. Well, Lindsay, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Trevor, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And if people want to find out a little bit more about you, give us the quick rundown.
Yeah, social media is probably the best place right now. So Lindsay Vastola, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, probably the best place right now to go to.
Cool. And we'll have it all in the show notes. All right, Lindsay, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Trevor.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.